Yes, it is my pleasure to be serving here as the interim minister and to be speaking to you again this morning, as you can tell, about the topic of friendship. And what a beautiful rendition of that song. That was just really, really nice. I appreciated that. So this morning, we're moving into a new month, and the month is celebrating the Great Adventure. And it'll be an adventure just to see what each of the speakers comes up with to talk about in regard to this great adventure. My talk this morning is going to be about all those relationships that we make along the way. And so I'm going to start this morning by reading out of another book written by our founder, Ernest Holmes, called Living the Science of Mind. And this chapter is actually called Getting Along with People. And the chapter is quite long. I'm not going to read it all, but I do suggest that it's worth reading. So if you have this book or you want to just grab it out of the bookstore and read this chapter, feel free, because I think everything he has to say on this is worthy of reading. So he says, "No one can live to himself alone. Other people are so much a part of our lives that we cannot think of living without them. On the other hand, much of our trouble comes because of others. In our relationships with others, two things must happen if we are to be happy. We must be with others, enjoy them and act with them, without in any way seeking to control their actions. This is not always the easiest thing to do, particularly with our closest friends, and I add even with our families. But you may be certain that the one who has the largest number of friends is the one who can work and play with them while at the same time letting them alone." So who here is not in relation to someone? I'm not talking about a relationship. Who is not in relation to someone in their life? Just the mere fact that you're here shows that you're in relation to someone. We're all in relation to each other as we're sitting in this room. How we interact, how we greet each other when we come into this space is how we are in relation to each other. If we work, if we go to school, if we just walk up and down the street, going shopping, doing our banking, all of these things that we do keep us in relation to other people. I think the only person or people who might not be in relation to other people are those who've chosen the path of, say, a hermit, or who choose to live completely isolated. And even then, they're in relation to nature and the space that they're living. So basically, this human experience is all about being in relation to each other and to something or someone else. In the science of mind, we teach a lot of principles, and those principles are to assist us in having the most joyous, love-filled, pleasant, supportive, and effective relationships that we possibly can have. Now, you've heard two readings that are the writings of Ernest Holmes, and those, the part that have been read to you this morning, are basically only 2 pages out of 2 huge books and actually out of a lot of other works that are written by Ernest Holmes. So those 2 pages, Holmes is talking about friends. And what I noticed when I looked up in the concordance about the word relationship is that every time that word showed up in his writings, he was talking about our relationship to God, our relationship with Spirit. And the term that he uses when he's talking about our interactions with each other is friendship. I'm going to use them interchangeably. I'm talking about all of the ways that we relate, and hopefully those relationships are friendships. Now, one of the things about religious science is we don't teach a lot of rules. We don't have, our roots are in the Judeo-Christian tradition, so there is the Old Testament or the Hebrew Scriptures that has the 10 Commandments. And then we have those commandments that were asked of Jesus, which were the greatest. We have that, but basically what we teach in religious science are principles, not a lot of rules and commandments that we're expected to follow in terms of how we relate to each other. And those principles are there to inform us and help us develop those kinds of relationships that we want, to help us bring into our lives friendships that we want. And so I believe the first place that we start is with that relationship with God. It is that inner relationship that we have with the essence of our spirit, whatever term we want to use, higher power, the universe, our source, life, love. Whatever that term is, that relationship is the basis for all of our other relationships. And one of the principles that we teach that you often hear is we're all one. And what we're talking about there is that we're one with that essence, with that God presence. And we're one with each other. Now, like all relationships, our relationship with God, however we want to define that, takes time and takes conscious attention in order to have that solid foundation of that relationship. And so we start there with that principle that we are all one. And from that principle, I recognize then that there's a God expressing in and through me that I am one with, and there's a God expressing in and through you, which you are one with, and that God is one and the same, therefore making you and I one with each other. And we use that principle of oneness to help us in our interactions by realizing that if I get judgmental about you, or I get down on you, or I treat you in a bad way, essentially I'm doing that to a part of myself. And likewise, if I'm judgmental about myself, if I'm getting down on myself, if I'm being ultra critical of myself, or treating myself badly, I'm treating a part of the expression of God in that way, as well as I'm not serving you, and I'm not serving myself by doing that. So that's one way that we can use that principle to help us when we're looking at relationship. Another principle that you've probably heard is that it's all good. You hear us say that a lot. It's all good. They even say it on the radio now. It's all good. So if we take those two principles, we're one, we're all one, and it's all good, does that mean then that anything that you say to me is okay, because it's all good? However you treat me is okay, because it's all good. And how I treat you and what I say to you is okay, because, well, I can handle it, so since we're one, you must be able to handle it, and it's all good anyway, right? Is that how we apply those two principles? No. And the reason it's not that way is because in our teaching, there's more than just those two principles. There's a whole teaching, there are more principles, there are more things that we bring into effect when we're looking at how we interact with each other and how we bring these teachings into the world. They all fit together like a puzzle, and they come together in a way that helps support us in the relationships that we make. So imagine for a minute that you decided you want to build one of those shelves that's about this big and this tall that have the different shelves in it. I don't know if any of you have ever done that, but I've tried it a couple times where you go to Lowe's or Home Depot and they tell you it's real easy to put it together yourself. And so you bring this thing home, and the first thing in the instructions is to lay out all the parts so that you can see that you have everything. Now, I am aware that some people are instructionally challenged. They like the challenge of putting things together without reading the directions and to see if they can figure it out on their own. I know that that's the way some people do it. I try really hard to follow those instructions. And the first one is usually lay everything out, make sure it's all there. So suppose I took that step number one, laid everything out, and notice there's the shelf that I want. Cool, I'm going to go get my books and pile them on that shelf. And then try and finish putting this thing together and wonder, why is it so hard to get this thing to fit together? I've got all my books on there, and why aren't the books standing up? They keep falling over. And why is it that this thing isn't 3 feet in the air like it says it's supposed to be 3 feet tall? It's still on the ground. Now, I'm sure you're probably thinking, come on, Reverend Bonnie, we're not that stupid. We wouldn't try and do that. But I think sometimes we take one or two principles, like the first two sets of instructions in an instruction guide, and we try and throw all of our life on top of those two, or all of our friendships, all of our relationships, and then we wonder why they're falling over. Things aren't holding together, and they're not as elevated as we'd like them to be in our life. Well, it's, I believe, similar to this shelf that we've tried to build on just the first two, or one even, instruction that we were given. So let's back up a little bit, and let's think about the relationships in our life. What I believe is that the number one relationship, that foundation, the bottom of the shelf, so to speak, is our relationship with Spirit or God. That's the foundation. And until we're clear about that, until we know what that means to us and how it is that we're interacting with that in our lives, it's hard to support all the other pieces because that foundation isn't solid yet. So that is the place to start. If you're wanting more friends, if you're wanting healthier relationships, Start there. What does that look like in your life? And then as we start to understand that first principle that we're all one, we realize as we're relating with God, we're relating with ourselves. And so we look at how is it that we're treating ourselves? How is it we're spending time with ourselves? How are we speaking to ourselves? How are we taking care of ourselves? How are we nurturing ourselves? This month in the Science of Mind magazine, under the heading of Science and Spirituality, there's an article called Indulge in a Dopamine Dessert. And in this, the authors tell us that dopamine is the brain's favorite drug. It's a pleasure chemical that actually gives birth to consciousness in our frontal lobes. Pain, however, real or imaginary, turns off the desire to explore the world, and it impedes the ability to make decisions. And so they suggest that we take about 60 seconds every hour. So imagine that, to spend 60 seconds every hour on yourself. Now, I say, even if you do it once or twice a day, that's great. Or even once a day, just to start this practice. So they say 60 seconds every hour to immerse yourself in the simple pleasures that can raise that dopamine level and help the way we feel. And they say the way that you can do this is to just slowly stretch your arms and legs. So go ahead, just stretch. Okay? Take a nice stretch and feel how good that feels. Just give yourself the pleasure of a stretch. Doesn't that feel good? And then I'm already seeing smiles. It's already working. Then they say, take your fingers and just slowly stroke the palm of your hand. Just very gently stroke the palm of your hand, maybe even the back of your hand, and just enjoy how that feels, the pleasure from that. And take a deep breath and just let that in. And then they say you can also stroke your face, maybe even run your hands through your hair if it won't mess up your do for Sunday morning. But take a few minutes to do that, and again, take a deep breath. Just feel how good it is to bring in that breath. And then when you take a deep breath, let yourself go, Just let that come out. Now, according to them, the sound actually slows down the thinking process of your frontal lobes. It actually lets your busy mind take a little nap, and it releases that dopamine that gives you a greater sense of clarity and satisfaction in the moment. So sometimes when we're having a hard time feeling good about ourselves, it's obvious that we're not going to be feeling very good about the rest of the world in that state. Take a few moments to start with the physical level. Just give yourself a little bit of feeling of sensation of pleasure. Get that dopamine going so the chemicals can start working that give you a sense of pleasure. And that'll help shift the feelings and attitudes so that then relating to the rest of the world can feel a little better. So right there is one little tool that can be used to help us in moving forward in the world as we take care of ourselves. Well, this morning in the reading, Ernest Holmes, in both readings, Ernest Holmes gave us about 7 things, I'm sure there was more in there, that we could do to help us in supporting our relationships and our friendships. And one of them was to send our thought full of love and affection out into the world. To send our thought full of love and affection out into the world. So we set the foundation of this little shelf we're building of our relationship, in our relationship with Spirit, God, the universe. And we have one side of it up now that is our interaction with ourself and our love of ourself. And we're still doing internal work. The other side then that's going to hold up this structure is what we're sending out into the world through our internal work. And that is love and affection. Joel Goldsmith actually says that a household where the members take time every day to move into meditation and send and feel that love of the other household members, and if there's no one living in your house, the people that are in your immediate environment that you interact with, your friends, your family, if you spend time in meditation seeing them enveloped in love and continue to do that out into your community, out into our country, the leaders of our governments, and then out into the world and the world leaders all around the world, all of them. If we do that, both of these authors, Ernest Holmes and Joel Goldsmith, say that we have a better chance of having more peace in our homes and greater peace in the world. So again, we're talking about the inner work that we're doing before we even see another individual. So we've sent out our thoughts of love and affection. The next thing is to think of the whole world as your friend. Think of the whole world as your friend. Now, sometimes as we're interacting with people, something gets triggered in us, and we're not too happy with what's going on. We might not feel good about the interaction. And often, if we think about it, if we move it from sort of a subconscious reaction to an actual conscious understanding of what's going on, we might realize that something they've done has triggered a similarity to an experience we had maybe with a caregiver, a parent, another authority figure, a sibling, somebody in the school, some other experience that wasn't very pleasant. And so all of a sudden, this person in front of us has become an extension of that previous experience. So we're not seeing them like a friend, because we don't expect that interaction. Sometimes it happens, but usually because we're not seeing them as what we would consider a friend. There's something else that's going on that can be healed or looked at or cleared up. So if we can see everyone, even our family, as our friend, how does that change how we interact with them? Now, I realized as I put this talk together that I could probably be here all day on this topic. And so I suggest that you take that piece of it home just to contemplate this week. Think about what friendship means to you. What do you do with friends that might be different even than how you treat a family member? Are there ways that they're sort of elevated to a special place that maybe we forget to do with the people in our immediate environment? So what does it mean to have a friend? What are all the different kinds of friendships? In the song, the friend was someone you could just call right away and they'd show up. That we could just call on our friends to support us. Imagine and spend time contemplating what life would look like if every single person you saw and interacted with you saw as a friend. How would that shift the world for you? That's just your homework for the week. So the next thing Ernest Holmes suggested that we do is love everybody. And again, this is something that starts internally, but we're starting to move out. We have the bottom structure, we have the two sides now, the internal love and support and our external that we're putting out. So now we're getting ready to put these shelves in the middle that are going to uphold our friendships. And that is through the love that we have for everybody. And what he says about that is to remember that there's always more good than bad in everybody, and to look for the good. Sometimes if we're seeing someone as other than a friend, we might think of them as somebody who's out to get us, someone that's going to take something from us, somebody that's going to disrupt our life. And so instead of seeing the good in them and looking for the good in them. And so that's the next thing he says, is to love them and then to always look for the good in them and to remember that there is more good than there is bad. Now, sometimes as we interact with people, things come up. And so part of why I said there's all these puzzles that we put together is because we don't want, if we're supporting the part of us that's in that loving relationship with us, we don't want interactions that don't feel loving. And so part of being open and loving and accepting of other people is also remembering that in that is the balance of loving ourselves and how it is that we can ask for loving behavior to come our way. And so sometimes it might mean that we have to ask this person in a situation, now if there's somebody here, somebody who comes here and we know that they understand affirmative prayer, we can say, can we take this situation into prayer? You don't need a practitioner or a minister to do that. Any interaction between any two people in this congregation can be taken into prayer. And if you're not comfortable, and that doesn't mean you have to know all the words, it means you can move into a place of just knowing that each of you is doing that in your own heart. Now, if you're out in the world and saying, will you take that into prayer with me, doesn't work with maybe your boss or somebody that you're upset with somewhere else, you could possibly ask, can we take a moment in silence? I need to regroup. I want to be as loving as possible in this situation. I need some time in silence I would like for both of us to go into silence and have the intention that the highest and best is unfolding for us in this situation and that there is an answer that will meet both of our needs. Can we take some time in silence together? Now, they might say no. So then what can you do? I say it's okay to say, well, I need that time, so I'll meet up with you again whenever. I need to go spend some time in silence, it's in prayer, so that I can regroup and be the most loving person that I can be in this exchange. So to me, that's a way that we can apply these principles and put them into action in our relationships. One of the other things that Ernest Holmes says is that we have to be with others. It's one thing to sit there and have this lovely framework of my relationship with God and my relationship with myself, and I'm sending all this love out into the world. The challenge is when we start actually interacting, being with other people. And part of why this is something that I bring up and is near and dear, as I say, to my heart, is because I was raised by a mother who loved these principles. She was raised in Christian Science by a Christian Science mother and father. So she grew up believing that God was in everyone, that everyone was an expression of God. She grew up going to a college for Christian Scientists, so she was surrounded by people who believed similarly to her. So when she got married and ended up out in the world, so to speak, she actually found it very challenging. It was very difficult for her to be around people who didn't believe like she did, who did things that she felt were not godly, who might express things about themselves that she didn't believe in, who weren't of the same educational level or class level as her. And so I watched her struggle with having all this amazing teaching and not being able to bring it into her relationships and interactions with other people. And that continued till the day she died. That was a very difficult thing for her. So I think once we get this structure, the challenge for us is how do we bring it into our relationships? How do we be with other people? And as Holmes said, enjoy them, act with them, and I think today we might say interact with them, and not seek to control their behavior. And that's the key, and that's the most difficult part, is when we want them to be different. Because the other thing that he says is that we want them to know that they are okay, that they are all right. Now, maybe we don't want to be around some of the things they choose to do, and we don't have to be. But we are also not seeking to change who they are and how they behave in the world. So sometimes it's okay to say, you're walking down this path, and I'm walking down this path. I love you, I support you, and I choose to be doing something different. That's okay too. But it's important, I think, for us to bring all of this out into our interactions with every single person we meet, not just the ones that we might think are easy because they believe the same way we do. And we know then that as we are experiencing our relationship with God and with ourselves, we are constantly evolving, just like everything else. And likewise, our relationships continue to evolve. And some relationships allow that evolution of both people to continue and maintain that support and love and wanting to be in each other's presence. And sometimes we evolve, and like I said, we take separate paths. And all of it's okay, because remember that other principle, it's all good. So I'm not being silly or facetious when I say that. We are moving ourselves into a place of being able to understand how to apply those principles and support ourselves in moving ahead and taking care of ourselves while we're relating to other people. So the last couple of things that Ernest Holmes suggested that we do is give people real human interest. He said people are longing for real human interest and to know that they are all right. Well, I had a therapist years ago who told me, Bonnie, you need to have less judgment and more curiosity. And to me, that speaks to the same thing. That basically the curiosity is the human interest. As I take interest in you and I ask you to tell me your story, maybe there's something that I don't understand. Maybe I need to understand how it is that you can listen to that kind of music. I'm thinking of my son. What does it do for you? Instead of judging that, to find out from him what it is that it does for him. How does that support him? Maybe there's a choice that somebody's made. Getting more curious about that choice so you can get to know their story. where they're coming from, instead of imposing judgment. That's where the curiosity helps. And it's part of showing real human interest. And then when we're letting them know that they're all right, again, that's when we're releasing the judgment. Where you're at on the path right now is perfect for who you are. And part of what we teach is that we support people in their path, where they are. That doesn't mean that they're going to stay there forever. We're supporting them where they are in love and with that genuine human interest. And should they choose to move somewhere, then we're there to also give them the support and love and interaction and friendship that will help them along that path. So now's the time. I need some water. Now's the time when I bring it home. Let's look at something here at the center. You've all heard a lot about Howling Coyote lately. And part of that is because we want you all to know that this is happening and we want to support this event. But I'm bringing it up today because the reason that we brought Howling Coyote back to the center is because when we did the visioning as a Vision Corps, which again, you're all invited to join us at any time and do that the first Sunday. So at 1 o'clock today, we'll be visioning for the center. One of the words that kept coming up through everyone's vision over a series of months was the word open, open. And we kept feeling like we needed to be more open, to open our doors more often than just on Sunday, or even just Sunday and maybe a few other times during the week. We wanted to be more open to other people, more open to the community. And so what did that look like? And when we were approached by Bob Burns to see whether we would be able to house the Howling Coyote again, it felt like, well, we've been instructed to be more open, let's go ahead and do this. So the decision from the board was to let's go ahead and do this. And then we found out that there are some people who love and cherish this place who found that that didn't sit well with them. And the reason it didn't is because of their love for this place. Because there's concern for how opening ourselves to people who might think differently than we are and who don't maybe love this place the way we do might treat it. And so again, being open, we have to listen to that concern because these are concerns coming from our friends, people we're already interacting with here. So as we think about how do we take these two seemingly different opinions and how do we bring them together to a way that works for everyone, we look at another principle that Ernest Holmes teaches. And that is the principle that principle itself is not bound by precedents. For me, that's one of the most freeing things that he taught. That basically, what I'm experiencing now and into the future does not have to be the same as what I've experienced my whole life. But what is the way to guarantee that your interactions with somebody who you've had interactions with before is not going to be the same in the future? There's only one way to guarantee that it's going to change.
Change yourself?
Change yourself, that's right. The only way that you can't change them, and Ernest Holmes already said, we want to interact with people without trying to change them. We can't force that change, so all we can do is change ourselves. So in a situation like this, what can we do differently to honor, to do that upholding of the part that loves ourself, loves our space, loves the beauty of this space? How do we do that? Well, we've developed, between the board and the people running Howling Coyote, a different and new contract that lets them understand how we want this place to be honored and respected, and how we are going to honor and respect them in this space, and who's responsible for seeing that this place is cared for. That's different than what was in place before. That's us honoring ourselves, loving ourselves, honoring our space, and opening ourselves to seeing shifting and changing and love between us and somebody, some entity, a group of people who might be different. Some of us are the same. Some of us go and enjoy the Howling Coyote too. So that's just one example. The other thing that I think is important there is this idea of us being a presence, being together. There's no way for the people who come at a different event to know what we're like here on Sunday morning if we're not there interacting and being present with them. Being a loving, welcoming light that has interest in them and who lets them know they're okay. And at some point, They might go, these people are really cool. I think I'm going to check them out on Sunday morning too. Who knows? But what I offer to you is that if you want more friends, not just the people here, not just the people that are coming in and out of these doors, but in general, if you want more friends, if you want to practice taking this teaching outside of your comfort zone so you can expand and grow, and if you do love this center and would like to see more people coming into this center, I invite you to be with others. Just get out and be with others in some way or another. Interface, interact with others. Enjoy them. Interact with them. Be a loving presence in their life. Take human interest in them and their story, and let them know wherever they are on their path is all right. And in that way, we bring what we teach here out into the world. And right now, here at the center, there's lots of opportunities. Saturday mornings, this bookstore is open, and I'm sure Beth would welcome other people here to be that loving presence, to interact with the people that are coming in from the community. Just to be someone who takes interest in who comes through the door and lets them know who we are as a light in their life. The Ramble is going to take place before Howling Coyote. People from the art community will be coming through to see the art of some of the people in this congregation who are presenting what they have for the other people in the community to see. So we can be a loving presence that way. Howling Coyote, of course. We're looking at having a booth at the Ren Fair. So people who want to be our loving presence for us at the Renaissance Fair, come forward, let us know, and bring yourself and that human interest out as we connect with other people in the community. We're going to have a UN Peace Celebration that you'll be hearing more about in September, where people from different faith communities in this community are going to have booths here during the street fair so that we can reach out and show the community how we all are at peace with each other and how we all address and bring about peace in our lives. So all of these events are ways that we here at the center are opening to this great adventure, and we're developing relationships, whole relationships, healthy, supportive, hopefully joy-filled relationships along the way. And so it is.
So it is.
And so one of the things that you might not know is that in the back of the Science of Mind textbook are meditations that Ernest Holmes has already written. There are affirmations that are back there, and there are also some treatments that are back there. So if one of your concerns is having the right words, you can go back there and find things that could probably support you in whatever it is that you're looking to get support in, that you can say as an affirmation for yourself. So I'm going to use one of these to take us into prayer. My love goes out to everyone in the world. I do not exclude anything, for I love all nature and everything that is. My love warms and lightens everything that it touches, and it goes out into all places. The love flowing through me is a power to all who come into contact with it, and I'll feel and know that I love. Love within me is complete and perfect. And so we just move into that space of feeling that love presence, that place that we start all relationship. That place that we are fully and completely connected with that which has created us, which is part of our continuing creation process. That which infuses us with the love that we then can project out into the world. So we allow ourselves to feel that, feel the pleasure from that, and allow ourselves to move into a very loving and whole place so that as we interact, connect, see people, pass people in the street, interact with people in places we've never been before, we know that we are fully supported by that love of God itself, that we are the loving presence in that situation, that we love ourselves enough to keep ourselves grounded in love, to ask for the time that we need to stay grounded in love, and to support ourselves in the balance of creating any relationship we create. So I just give thanks today, knowing that Spirit moves in and through each one of these people here, each one of these beautiful people, that we are all in relation to each other. I give thanks for each person who has showed up here today, each presence that has brought their light and added it to this celebration this morning. I give thanks for each way that we greet each other and support each other on this path that we are on. And I know that this center is fully supported as it reaches out and opens up more to interacting with the community. I know that we draw to us people who hold in their hearts love as well, who bring to us love and respect for this place and for ourselves. And so I just affirm that and give great thanks for that and allow that to be the truth of our words as we hold these words in our own minds. And as together we say, and so it is.